Hello BookTube. In this video I'm going to give you what I suppose you could call a library tour of all the books I currently own. I've been planning to do this for quite a while, but I just haven't got around to it, so I'm going to start today. But before I do, I'll just explain about where my books are. I've only in this room got one bookshelf, which is over on the left-hand side here. There's a thin, small one, a small white one. I think it's from IKEA. And so the rest of my books are in drawers. My computer here is on a chest of drawers, and so I've got a drawer here and one down at the bottom here, and then under the bed I've got a drawer there where I've got books as well. So this is going to be going through each of these videos, these drawers, and then the bookshelf, and just showing you what's there. But before I do that, I'll show you what I'm currently reading, which is Special Deliverance. Just wait a second. Special Deliverance by Clifford D. Simak. I'm reading that as a part of an ongoing event that Sean D. Sandfast is running, where each month you read a different Simak that Sean has chosen. Sean's a big fan of Clifford D. Simak, and I've read 4 Simak books so far, and I've enjoyed all of them. Well, I've read 3 so far, and 4 with this one as I'm reading, and I've enjoyed the 3 that I've read. And I am enjoying Special Deliverance so far. But I should have a review of that sometime next week. Now, the drawer here mostly consists of stuff either I've recently read or that I'm planning to read. So some of these books will look very familiar to my subscribers. But the first lot I'll show you are books that I'm planning to read. So as a part of Garb August, I'm going to try a category romance, which is Mills and Boon. I've never read a Mills and Boon in my life, so I'm going to have a go now. I might as well have a go this month, since it's sort of perfect for Garb August, as it's trash. Then also for Garb August, I'm going to read the first novel Edgar Wallace wrote, which is For Just Men. Edgar Wallace was a really big sort of thriller writer from the Edwardian era up until the 1930s, and he's had an afterlife because a lot of his stuff was adapted into film and TV shows, but in the UK and also in Germany, where he's still to this day really popular. And a lot of the post-war West German film industry, sort of a lot of the films they produced were adaptations of Edgar Wallace, and so I'm looking forward to read that. It's not the first Edgar Wallace I've read. The first one was Sanders of the River, which is about a colonial policeman in West Africa, which was published in 1911. I enjoyed that. It was turned into a film called Sanders of the River in the 1930s with Paul Robeson in, the great African-American actor who's a wonderful singer, who sings Old Man River in, I think it's in Showboat. Anyway, going off, but that's a great film, and also there's a very good parody of that film called Windbag of the River, which is a Will Hay film, which is extremely entertaining. Interestingly, the film Sanders of the River had Jomo Kenyatta in as an extra. He was the first post-independence leader of Kenya, and he led the campaign for Kenyan independence in the 1950s and 60s. So George MacDonald Fraser once wrote about sort of Hollywood and history, and he'd write about Sanders of the River and wonder what Kenyatta thought of the film as an extra in it in the 30s. And that would have been interesting to hear what he thought of it. I don't think anybody's ever. I'll have to look at see if any of Kenyatta's biographies mention what he says about it. But anyway, so it's slightly good off topic. Anyway, this is Shiloh by Paul Bedford. I read that a couple of days ago, and the review went up a day or 2 ago. Good I've been reading a couple of Black Horse westerns over the past couple of months. Particularly, I read quite a few of them in June on the Range. If you're in Britain, you'll probably recognise books like this, because in public libraries in the UK, there's usually at least one shelf, if not an entire bookshelf, of these. They're sort of these 160 page long pulp westerns, and the ones I've read I've really enjoyed. Now, I should say I got this one from the library. as I have the other ones here. Next book is Tiptoe Boys by James Follett. Just did a review of this. This was written to be made into a film, and it was made into a film called Whose Dares Wins, which I recommend if you've not seen that to watch it, and also to read the book here. I've done a review of that on my channel a few days ago, so if you're interested in hearing about that, take have a look. The next one is another Black Horse Western. These are books that I am going to read this month. So this one is Tanner's Revenge by Michael Stewart. Now I picked this one because in June on the Range, I read a Michael Stewart Black Horse Western called The Money Train, and it was really good. I read it in about 2.5 hours, and so I'm wondering if that's going to be true of Michael Tanner with this. So I'll be reading that after I've read the Simac book. The next one is the first ever Shadow book by Maxwell Grant, real name Walter B. Gibson, called The Living Shadow. I heard about the Shadow. The first ever was actually the film with Alec Baldwin. Yeah, it is Alec Baldwin from the early 1990s, and then years later from the channel Razor Fist. The channel's called Rageaholic, and it's run by Razor Fist. He's a big fan of the Shadow. He's got he's done quite a few videos on the comic book adaptations, as well as pointing out that the Shadow was plagiarised by the creators of Batman to create Batman. And also, Razor Fist has a channel called The Shadowcast. I'll leave a link to that in the description, where he goes through various Shadow pulps, and he discusses this one as well. And if you're a fan of the Shadow, or you're interested, or you want to know a bit more about the Shadow, I would recommend subscribing to the Shadowcast and going through its back catalogue of videos, because they're really well worth to listen to. And also, Michael K. Vaughan has quite a few videos, a video or two on the Shadow, as well as other pulp characters. So you might have a look if you put into YouTube Michael K. Vaughan the Shadow. Michael's video should come up as well. The next one is a Louis L'Amour book called North to the Rails. Now I was actually meant to read this in July, but one thing got in way of the other, and I didn't get a chance to. So I'm going to read this month. The reason why I'm reading this is because in during June on the Range, I tried reading a Louis L'Amour book, which is called Showdown at Yellow Butte. Couldn't get into it, and so I've decided I wanted to read this to see if it was that particular book, Louis L'Amour's writing, or just me in June that didn't get on with it. So I'm going to find out which one of those is the cause of my inability to read, to get through Showdown at Yellow Butte this month. Next one is a Dick Francis called The Edge. I'm going to be reading this as a part of Summer of Sport, an event created by Mark Book Drive with Elvis, who is not on BookTube at the moment because he is in fact moving into a house he's had built in the Czech Republic. So I should say he lives in the Czech Republic, so he's now moving from the place he was living into the place he's had built. He also has a channel. I'll leave a description to that. I'll leave a link to his other channel in the description, where he discusses the creation. He discusses his building his house, and so he's got a few videos documenting that. So I'll leave that in the description. But I'm going to read that for Summer Sport this month, which is the last month of Summer Sport. Then there's two books I'm going to be. These again are all. These two are for Garb August, but they're on the same topic, which is it's a novelisation of the 2007 St. Trilliums film, which I'm a great fan of that film. Mainly, particularly because the acting's great, the sort of comedy of it is really enjoyable. But also, the music is great. It's the music I grew up listening to as a teenager, so I'm going to look forward to reading this and also watching the film again. And in addition to that, I'm going to have a look through, and when I do the review of St. Trilliums, both the film and the book, I'm going to go through this, which is a collection of the St. Trilliums cartoons. The cartoons were invented by Ronald Searle, in the 1940s and 50s for newspapers, and then they were adapted into films in the 50s, which if you've never seen, I highly recommend because those films are really good as well. And he sort of kicked off, and that's where this is where Centrinians comes from. Now this doesn't have all the Centrinian stuff, which has quite a lot of Centrinian stuff in here. So I'm going to I'll be showing that in the video when I do the review of the Centrinians film and novelisation. Now the next ones are a mixture of things I have read or that I received recently and I intend to read at some point very soon. So the next one is one that I read at the beginning of this month. It's a book that I'm reading as part of my ongoing sort of event to read independent authors, and this one is A Hot Dose of Hell by Steve Stark. Really enjoyed this book, and I can highly recommend it. Horror novel where people take drugs and it turns them into not zombie, but zombie-like people similar to The Infected in 28 Days Later. Really enjoyable. It is very gory, but it has a great deal. There's a lot of funny bits in it. And here's another one. And here's another book I've read this month, which was the first thing I read for Garth August, which was Satan Was a Lesbian by Fred Haley. It's as trashy and fun and as funny as you think it would be by the title, as well as this book cover. I love this book cover, and I also love the title. As I said when I showed it in a book haul video I did back in July, if you could win Garth August, this book would win Garth August by a country mile, just for the cover and the title. And the book itself is, as I say, quite trashy. It's very trashy and very fun. So if you ever get a chance to read it, give it a go. The next one is a book that I bought back from Sean D. Standfast's when I was up there recently, and he gave it me, and I'm going to read it at some point. It's one of the other books that Bram Stoker wrote, which is a mummy book called The Jewels of the Seven Stars, which I'm going to read at some point. Because I like Dracula, and I'm just wondering what Bram Stoker's other stuff is like. The only other thing that other than Dracula I have read is these Dracula's Guest, which is a short story, which was, I believe, originally actually the first chapter of Dracula. So it'd be interesting to read something that's not Dracula related by Bram Stoker. This is another one that Sean gave me, which I'll be reading at some point, which is about an RAF raid on Pendamund, which was the German rockets testing site during the Second World War, by Martin Middlebrook, called the Pendamund Raid. In fact, it took place on the 17th to the 18th of August 1943, so it took place 2 days. We're 2 days away from the 81st anniversary of the event. So I'm going to end up reading that at some point. And then we have, let me just keep this lot from going over. The Divine Comedy by Dante Alighieri, which I've heard of but I've never read, so I'm going to read this at some point. This is an illustrated edition, so I'm going to look forward to having a good look at it when I get the chance to. Just move things out of the way so I can stop piling things up. Right, there we go. Hey, right. One thing that I didn't get around to in June Round, but I am going to at some point read, which is a British edition of a 1950s Western pulp magazine, and it's got a novel in and a couple of short stories. So I'm going to at some point read those as well. I might well read those for Garth August, given they're really short, because being a pulp magazine is definitely Garth August, definitely part of Garth August. Next one is, actually I have two copies of this, but I'll just show you the one. It's a book I have actually read already. It's Labour and the Empire, the Labour Party and British Imperialism 1900 to 1970 by Tony Judge. I really enjoyed this. Whilst I didn't agree with the author's political bias or political slant on things, it's a really good book. Tony Judge is a really good writer. And it's a really interesting subject, covering sort of the Labour Party, both in opposition and government, in their attitudes towards the British Empire and how it should be developed. The next one is another Tony Judd book, which I also did a review of, called Tory Socialist, Robert Blatchford and Merry England, which is a biography of Blatchford. Well worth the read. Again, Tony Judd is a great writer and a really enjoyable subject. Blatchford was an early socialist, and he was heavily involved in the early socialist movement in Britain and one of the founders of the British Labour Party. Next one is independent indie author, which actually prompted me to start my indie author my event to read an indie author month, which is Lost Causes by Richard Nichols. A great sort of spy thriller. Really enjoyed it. Very much in the style of John Buchan and Ian Fleming and Sapper, who wrote Bulldog Drummond, and also Dennis Wheatley, old Dark Games as well. And then there's a book which I hadn't read before, but which I really enjoyed, and I am at some point going to continue with the series, is Dune by Frank Herbert. I don't think I need to sort of explain much more about this, other than that I really enjoyed it, and as I say, I'm going to go on at some point to read the rest of the books in the series, at least the ones by Frank Herbert. I'm not sure about the ones by Brian Herbert and Michael J. Anderson, though I may at some point go on to them, but I'm not sure yet. And then there's this one, which is the book that the Lula Mall that I couldn't get into, which is Showdown at Yellow Butte. Still don't know why I couldn't get into it. Hopefully I'll be able to tell why when I read North to the Rail this month. Now this one I haven't read, but I do want to read it. It's a book that I bought when I was down in Bedford just before Sean moved up north. There's a bookshop in Bedford. Wish I could remember the name of it now. If Sean watches this video, he'll almost certainly leave a comment with the name of it in. And it's a local Bedford author called Oliver Richbell, and it's essentially the idea of people launching a coup in Britain in reaction to Brexit, and it's called Gloriana by as I say, Oliver Richbell. It looks good, it sounds good. I haven't actually read it yet, so I'm going to at some point read that as well. Probably maybe this month, given it's so short. Next one is a book that is an indie author, and one that I'm going to be reading next month is Muscle by John Davies. Or John Davis, or it's either Davies or Davis. I apologise, John, if you see this. If you do see this, John, just correct me in the comments, please. Which sounds good. It's about a feud between a gangster. It's about from the back here. It seems, and from John's interviews, it seems like a fight that's going to occur. A bouncer gets caught up in a fight with a local gangster, which sounds good. And also, John has said that he was influenced by Ted Lewis, who's most famous for writing Jack Carter Goes Home, or Jack Carter Comes Home, I can't remember what it is, which was then adapted into the great Mike Hodges film with Michael Caine as the main character, Get Carter, which if you've never seen, I highly recommend. And also, I have a review of that film on my channel, so if you have a look in my playlist, I have a film review playlist, and it's on there. Next one is Simak book, which is the last Simak book I read, which is All Flesh and Grass. I've got a review of that on my channel. Really enjoyed it, and it's not the best Simak book I've read. I still think City is the best one, but I really did enjoy this. Then we have the next one, which is they're actually two books. They're connected because they're omnibuses, two omnibus volumes of Heritage Chronicles by Hugh Walpole, and these cover a family called the Herries from the 18th century up until the 1930s, I believe. And I've read the first one, which is Rogue Herries. I enjoyed it. It's a bit unusual in terms of the sort of Walpole style of writing, but I did enjoy it, and I will at some point carry on with Judith Paris, as well as the other two books, which are The Fortress and Vanessa. So I'll be reading them at some point. I'm not sure whether it'll be this year or next year, but anyway, I will read them. And then there's another. This other book is one that I will be reading at some point. It's another Tony Judge book. It's a bit. It's quite a bit. It's a bit more chunkier than his other ones, but that's understandable given it covers. I think 70 years of British politics in quite detail, which is Tory Socialism by, as I say, Tony Judge. It says their subtitle is English Culture, Politics and Society, 1870 to 1940. So to be covering covering the same ground as the Robert Blatchford biography, as well as the stuff in the Labour and the Empire, which should be interesting. But more broadly than that, it should be covering, as you said with the title, culture and society as well, which will be interesting to read. Now, I'm just going to put my microphone down once they get the. I'm going to get one volume of this out because they're pretty much they on the outside look the same. This is, I have 3 volume set, and they're all this size, of the Mysteries of Paris. If that shows, it is somewhat damaged. I was intending to read this month, but things have got in the way, so I'm putting it up now. However, just to give you an idea, the book was written by Eugene Sue, and it was as was quite common in the era. It was serialised, and then it was put together and published as a single novel, in this case 3 volumes. This version is 3 volumes. However, it was originally French, and then it was translated to English. And however, this is, as far as I can tell, an original first edition British translation. So I'll just show you, and it has these wonderful illustrations inside, as you can see there. And also, at the beginning of each chapter, you get illustrations like this. That sort of shows up. And then spot illustrations. Let's see one. Let's find another one like that there throughout the chapter. And I bought this off eBay for £14. I still don't know. I understand that it was going to be cheap because of the damage on the spine for that first volume, and the other volumes have some minor scuffs and that, and some of the pages are a bit stained. But still, £14 with no cost for post and packaging seems astonishing to me, especially when at the time I found it, I was looking for the Penguin paperback, which is a big thick volume, a big thick one, because I thought that would be quite cheaper to get. And that, on both eBay and Amazon, was going for between about £22 and £25, something like that. I just couldn't believe that the modern reprint was so expensive compared to this original English language translation from, as I say, 1846. So, but anyway, that is the end of my book tour. I'll probably do another one tomorrow or the day after. But with that, BookTube, I will say goodbye and see you later.